The Pain Invasion arc remains one of the defining arcs in the Naruto series. Most fans refer to this arc being the peak of the Naruto manga. Years of build-up with the Akatsuki all came to a head during this arc, and Pain did the one thing that not even Orochimaru could do. Pain actually destroyed Konoha, shattering it down to its very foundation itself. Even the mighty copy ninja Kakashi Hatake ended up dying during this arc, giving his life in order to ensure Choji could provide the required intel needed to ensure Konoha would have the ability to fight off the 6 paths of pain that were destroying the village. However, noticeably absent during all of this was Team Gai, and for a pretty good reason. Neji was an elite Jonin with the Byakugan who could have been hell for the 6 paths to deal with. Tenten was a weapon specialist who could have helped fight off some of the animal summonings. Rock Lee, by this point in the story, was already freakishly strong, being able to open up several of the inner gates, which could have helped big time in the battle against Pain, especially if you start putting these ninja with other shinobi who are fighting off the 6 paths of pain. Then of course you have Might Gai, a man who very easily could have put up the best fight against Pain before Naruto arrived, and if he had intel on the 6 paths of pain, barring being trapped inside of a Chibaku Tensei, there's an argument that can be made that Might Gai with intel could have won a 6 versus 1 battle if he had that prior intel. So just what could have happened if Team Gai, or in particular Might Gai, was in Konoha during Pain's invasion? Well, in today's video, I want to come off of my what if hiatus and discuss this scenario, and like prior what ifs, there will be an animated fight for this what if. So with that being said, let's dive into this latest installment of Naruto What If. Now, in order for this scenario to establish, we have to first establish a trigger point, which for me comes down to 4 different scenarios. Scenario 1, Team Gai is never sent off on a mission before Pain's invasion. Scenario 2, Team Gai still gets sent off on a mission but return much sooner. Scenario 3, Team Gai arrives just after Naruto is captured by Pain. And scenario 4, Team Gai leaves for their mission, but Neji, being a Jonin, leads the team and Might Gai stays behind. I want to actually use scenario number 4 because I've already done scenario number 1 on Kryptonian Saiyan. Now, originally, the Pain invasion starts around chapter 418 or chapter 419, and Gai doesn't notice the birds that are flying away from Konoha until chapter 427, which is during the time that Pain is beginning to speak with Tsunade. That's when Might Gai leads the team back to Konoha. However, we're going to change all of that. So, given that Neji is a Jonin and he's a freaking prodigy, there's no real reason why Neji couldn't lead this team on a mission without Might Gai being there, unless Gai was specifically requested by the person who hired the team, which that is debatable. Now, pulling a Minato here, Gai would basically send his prodigy student to lead his team of Chunin on a mission, which would then lead to Might Gai being in the village during the invasion. Now, in my opinion, we have 2 scenarios that can happen here. So scenario 1 now would be Might Gai's inside the village and he helps defend the village itself, likely being nearby Kakashi during the battle with the Deva Path, and the 2 winning against the Deva and the Ashra Path. However, this would also mean that Gai would have a bit of trouble fighting against the animal summonings until Naruto shows up. Now, that leaves us with scenario 2, which is what I'm going to go with, where Might Gai is returning from training outside of the village and catches the tail end of the Deva Path attacking the guards as he did in the manga. Now, I'm not sure if the anime changed some things here, but what I do know in the manga is that the Deva Path killed all the guards, and then afterwards, Conan and the rest of the 6 paths of pains arrive after the fact. This is where things get really tricky. If it's a 7 versus 1 battle, which I don't think will be likely to play out here, there's no way in hell that Gai wins without any type of intel. And just keeping it short and sweet, this is not the Might Gai that you saw in the early part of the war. We're not referring to that guy, let alone the guy who went up against Madoru Uchiha. There's a drastic difference in power between Gai during that time period. So this is Might Gai closer to after he fought against Kisame in early Naruto Shippuden. So Gai would be an extreme disadvantage without help. And then the other thing is that if that fight were to take place, it kills the whole element of surprise, which was a big part of the reason why Pain's invasion worked. So that's another reason I don't think it breaks off into a 7 versus 1 battle. But for the sake of this video, which from here the following scene would occur. Now, obviously, this fight comes down to if you believe that Pain would resort to using Chibaku Tensei, which I don't think it's too crazy given that Gai's 6th gate onward would be a bit of a problem, and I don't think any of us see a scenario where this version of Might Gai is breaking out of Chibaku Tensei. You have to keep in mind here, and this is going to be something a lot of you guys don't actually remember, but there's a 6-month gap between the events of the Kazekage arc and what's going on here in the Pain arc, because in chapter 310, Sai reveals that there are 6 months left before Orochimaru can actually take over Sasuke's body. From Naruto Databook 3, which ends at volume 43 where Sasuke awakens his Mangekyo Sharingan, we know that the build up to the Pain invasion arc is a lot closer towards the end of that calendar year, because Might Gai is still listed as 30 years old in the databook, and there isn't a significant jump in time during Jiraiya dying in Pain's invasion, because Tsunade says in chapter 408 that the autopsy of the path that Jiraiya destroyed would take only a week to complete. Now, by the events of chapter 419, when Pain's invasion began, the autopsy was still ongoing. Now, it's for that reason I don't see a major bump in power for Might Gai during that time, and if Gai's caught in the Chibaku Tensei, the 8th gate is the only real thing that's going to allow him to break out of it, given the circumstances and the fact that the 8th gate burns out very quickly in the manga. Gai would manage to break out the Chibaku Tensei, but it would take a crap ton of the 8th gate's power for this version of Gai to actually do. In the end, while the Deva path would be taken out, Nagato would simply have the animal path launched into the air while everyone's headed to Gai's location, to have the other paths in Konan summon to cause a distraction while the Naraka path revives the Deva path, and the invasion would continue on as it did originally. However, one major change that I do see taking place is that Kakashi doesn't actually fight and die against the Deva path in this part of the timeline, because of when Gai versus the Deva path would have actually taken place. I think that lowers the likelihood of Kakashi running up against that particular path of Pain. Outside of the Deva path, the animal path, and the human path, I think that Kakashi has a half decent chance of surviving otherwise. This means that Naruto arrives after Pain blows up Konoha, but this is where things get tricky. In this timeline, Nagato would have used a Chibaku Tensei on Might Gai, village destroying Shinra Tensei, and another Chibaku Tensei to trap Naruto after he transformed into the Nine Tails. In the manga, Nagato barely had the energy left to revive the people he killed during the invasion. Given this info, I don't think that Nagato would have enough chakra to revive the people in Konoha who he killed. Now, this means that those who died during the invasion will remain dead, with notable deaths being Gai and Shizune. The 5 Kage summit still goes on in the way that it occurred. Obito still kills Konan and takes back the Rinnegan from Nagato's dead body, and the war arc still continues. Meanwhile, the death of Might Gai would absolutely destroy Rock Lee and weigh heavily on Kakashi, enough so that when he's approached to become the Hokage, the death of Gai either inspires him to honor Gai's sacrifice, or we see a version of Kakashi from the Kakashi Hiden novel who's apprehensive to take the position, but is ultimately spared from ever having to make a decision because Tsunade is going to wake up from her coma. Now, where things get really tricky is the battle with Kisame during Naruto's training. Naruto still gets his leg stuck after attacking Kisame, which means that with no Might Gai there to stop him, Kisame kills the shinobi outside the Waterfall of Truth and escapes with the gathered intel before Killer Bee's ever to catch up with them, which means that Killer Bee never gets Samihara. That intel gathered and having an alive Kisame to support Obito is a major boost. One that further gives the Akatsuki a boost headed into the war arc, enough so that the scope of the future battles is changed drastically. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that the alliance between Kabuto and Obito would also get a major boost as well. This would be because Kabuto would have Might Gai as one of his Edo Tensei. Even though this would be a much weaker version of Might Gai than the one we saw in the war arc, who would be even further nerfed by Kabuto's Edo Tensei not being able to bring him back at the full power when he died, Gai as an Edo Tensei will still be an absolute monster despite all these handicaps. There aren't many in the alliance who have enough power to fight Might Gai, let alone the skill, especially if Kabuto makes Gai start opening the inner gates, and because he's an Edo Tensei, there's likely not any drawbacks to using the inner gates. Meanwhile, Kisame being alive likely means that Kisame is fighting alongside the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, which makes Kakashi's battle a lot harder in my opinion. In my opinion, Kabuto would have Gari and Pakura summon both the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist as well as Might Gai. This makes Kakashi's battle a lot harder, and seeing his reanimated sensei likely has an emotional toll on Rock Lee, as Lee is forced to fight off Might Gai, burning through his stamina fighting off Gai by using the 6th gate, which was Rock Lee's limit during the war arc. Now, Kakashi would have a much harder time fighting the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist due to the fact that Kisame is right there on the battlefield. During an emotional battle between master versus student, Rock Lee would be pushed to do the absolute impossible and unlock the 7th gate mid-battle to keep up with this master, while Kakashi attempted to fight off Zabuza, Haku, Kisame, all while the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist absolutely demolished the remaining forces in the 3rd division. Now, given how intense this battle would be, Sakura would have no choice but to release her Byakugo seal to help Kakashi by successfully helping fight off Kisame long enough to allow Kakashi to have Zabuza and Haku sealed away. This is where things get very tricky. Kabuto could very well have Gai spam the 8th gate. However, staying in character, I don't think that Kabuto would do so until the team of Kakashi and Byakugo Seal Sakura are able to kill Kisame, which in of itself is a fight worth seeing since Kisame would have Samihara. Between the chakra draining of Samihara, Kisame's super shark bomb jutsu, and his last resort of his water shark dance jutsu that he used versus Killer Bee, where he made that huge dome of water, the battle will be very high difficulty for Kakashi to win alone without Byakugo Seal Sakura's help, and even then, that's a tall task in my opinion, given the advantages that Kisame has by using Samihara, unless Sakura does something like she did in the Sakura Hida novel, where she actually uses her chakra as a poison. Meanwhile, the battles with the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, who Kakashi had to have his famous off-screen rampage in the manga for the division to be able to seal away, would continue to rage on. However, there's a bigger problem here. After Kisame's killed off, things would take a turn for the worse, with Kabuto pulling out his trump card. Taking full control of Might Gai, Gai would be forced to open the 8th gate, which would quickly leave Rock Lee near death after a mighty barrage of attacks. While Sakura healed Rock Lee, Kakashi would watch helplessly as Gai unleashed a barrage of evening elephants to wipe out most of the 3rd division. Just as he found himself being enraged after having to seal Zabuza away, Kakashi would have his rage moment here in the toughest battle Kakashi has ever faced. While his 8th gate wouldn't be nowhere near as powerful as what we saw War Arc Gai do to Jinchuriki Madara, it would still be one hell of a challenge. After Sakura heals Rock Lee, the two of them would have to fight out the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and seal them away, leaving Kakashi to fight Might Gai alone. The eternal battle of rivals would be the absolute highlight of the war arc. Kakashi would have to truly use all 1000 jutsu that he copied. He had to push past his own limits to hold off this weaker version of 8th gate Gai, where he still has a very high likelihood of being killed by his best friend. One miscalculated attack, one error in judgment would see Gai kill off Kakashi, especially if Kabuto forces Gai to start spamming some of his higher level jutsu in order to break through Kakashi's barriers that Kakashi might put up. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I'm the biggest Kakashi fan you're probably ever gonna meet, but it would take the biggest ass pull in the entire series for Kakashi to actually win in a situation like this. The only advantage that Kakashi has right now is the fact that we don't know what his 1000 jutsu are, and we don't know whether or not Kakashi's got a couple of jutsu, one strong enough to actually knock Gai down hard enough to where Gai has to actually use the Edo Tensei's ability to instantly regenerate, and then he would have to simultaneously seal Might Gai away before the Edo Tensei regeneration can fully kick in, and it would have to be an insanely powerful sealing jutsu. I'm just gonna assume Kakashi has something like that because it would take the biggest ass pull in the series, and that's factoring in everything that's happened with Kakashi in the war arc, where Kakashi was a walking ass pull throughout the war arc. Now, if they can get Might Gai off of the board for Kabuto, and by another ass pull level miracle, Kakashi Kakashi's able to actually get there in time to save Naruto from being captured by Obito, if they can survive up until the point where Obito's trying to put the Nine Tails inside of Naruto, as well as the missing Biju chakra he needs, if they can survive up to that point against Madara, so we're talking about Minato with no arms, Gaara, the same Gaara who got slapped around by Edo Tensei Madara, Kakashi, who will be more fatigued now, and Rock Lee, assuming that they can all survive long enough to buy Obito the time to put all that chakra into Naruto's body and for Hagoromo to have his speech, then everything's going to progress exactly as it did before. But keeping it real with you, that is such a tall task. I'm not even sure that that cast can actually handle it. So if you think that they can pull it off, then this What If ends with a happy ending. If you're like me and it's a bit skeptical, then Kage is going to get revived and that's going to be the actual end of the series. So I want to know from you guys, which outcome do you think is the most likely? Edo Tensei Might Gai is such a game changer. That's one of those ones to where, Jesus Christ, I see why Kishimoto did not revive certain characters into the war arc. Let me know how you feel down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.